AITA for dumping my girlfriend after she booked a trip to Italy with her ex? My name is Justin. I work as a freelance graphic designer from home. My routine until recently was quite simple and predictable. I woke up early, made coffee, and spent most of the day in front of the computer completing projects for clients I almost never saw in person. I had been with my girlfriend, Samantha, for almost 2 years. For the past 7 months, we had been living together in a small one-bedroom apartment we rented in Atlanta, Georgia. It was nothing special, but it had what we needed: a modest living room, a functional kitchen, and a bedroom where, at least in theory, we rested after long days. Our relationship worked, or at least that is what I thought. Samantha had her own online business. She sold custom-designed mugs, notebooks, and small personalized gifts through platforms like Etsy. It was not a large operation, but it gave her independence. I always admired that about her. She was consistent, organized, and she knew what she wanted. Our life together followed a pretty clear pattern. During the week we worked, on weekends we would go out for dinner or stream a show at home. And once a year, without fail, we organized a vacation, always the same thing. We chose a beach destination in Florida, looked for an affordable deal online, and drove down for a few days. It was nothing luxurious, but it was enough to disconnect. I thought that stability was a good thing, something solid, until it stopped being so. I remember perfectly the day everything began to change. It was an ordinary afternoon. I was finishing a design for a client. When Samantha arrived, she left the keys on the table and stood there for a moment, as if she were thinking about how to say something. That caught my attention. "Is everything okay?" I asked while still looking at the screen. "We need to talk," she replied. I turned my chair slowly. It was not a common phrase for her. It did not sound casual. "Sure, tell me." She sat across from me, but she did not sound angry, yet she was not calm either. "This year I do not want to do the same old thing." I frowned. "Do you mean the vacation?" She nodded. "Yes, always the beach, always the same. I feel like we are repeating a routine." It did not seem like a serious issue to me. "Well, we can change. Go to another city, something more cultural." She shook her head. "It is not that." That is when I felt the conversation heading in another direction. "Then, what do you want to do?" She took a deep breath before answering. "I want to travel, but not with you." The silence that followed was heavy. I thought I had misunderstood. "What?" "I want to take a trip with someone else." I did not react immediately. I just looked at her, waiting for her to clarify what she had just said. "With who?" She hesitated. It was just a second, but enough for my mind to start imagining the worst. "With Derek," she finally said. The name was familiar. "Derek, your ex." "Yes." Right then I felt that sharp blow to the chest that is not exactly pain, but is not indifference either. "How long have you been talking to him?" "He texted me a few weeks ago. We started talking and the idea of the trip came up." "And you accepted?" "Yes." Her tone was firm. There was no obvious doubt or guilt, just a decision made. That bothered me more than I expected. "You are not asking me," I said. "You are telling me when you already decided." Samantha sighed, as if the conversation was already exhausting her. "I did not want you to react badly." "And what did you expect?" I replied. "That I would think it was normal?" "It is not what you are thinking." I shook my head. "Then explain it to me." "He is no longer my ex in that sense," she said. "He is just someone I had something with in the past. Now we are friends." "It does not work like that," I answered without thinking too much. "For me it does." The tone began to change. "And where are you planning to go?" "To Italy." That caught me by surprise. "Italy?" "Yes. Rome, Florence. I have always wanted to go." That was true. She had mentioned it several times. "And he is going to pay for everything." "Yes." The answer was direct. Right then I understood that it was not just a trip, it was what it represented. "And what does that mean to you?" "It means it is an opportunity that I do not want to lose." "And why can we not do it?" Samantha looked at me with a mix of frustration and realism. "Justin, you know that right now we cannot afford something like that." I did not answer immediately. "It is not just about money," I finally said. "It is about respect. I am not disrespecting you." I let out a short laugh, without humor. "Going away with your ex to one of the most romantic places in the world does not seem like a lack of respect to you." "No, if nothing happens." I stared at her. "Not even you believe that." The silence returned. "You are exaggerating," she said. "No, I am seeing the obvious." She crossed her arms. Then, what do you want me to do? I want you to understand what you are doing. I understand it perfectly. I shook my head. No, you do not understand it. Are you giving me an ultimatum? No, I replied. I am telling you that this has consequences. That seemed to bother her. I am not going to live my life according to what you consider right. And I am not going to pretend that this is normal. That is your problem. That phrase changed something. No, I replied. It is our problem. It is not, she insisted. This is insecurity. That word ignited everything. This is not insecurity, I said. They are boundaries. Your boundaries, the boundaries of anyone with common sense. She rolled her eyes. I knew you were going to react like this. Then why did you do it? She did not answer. She got up and walked toward the bedroom. Samantha, we are not done. Yes, we are done. She opened the closet and took out a suitcase. I felt an immediate emptiness. What are you doing? Packing. You are leaving now? Yes, just like that. I am not going to stay and argue. It is not just any argument, I said. It is our relationship. She stopped for a second, but did not turn around. Our relationship does not depend on a trip. It depends on your decisions. She kept packing clothes. I am not going to lose this over an argument. It is not an argument. It is a line. She closed the suitcase forcefully and finally turned toward me. I am free to do what I want, she said. I am not married. I stayed silent. That is what you think, I replied. It is reality. We have been together for 2 years. 2 years without moving forward, she interrupted. You always say later. That took me by surprise. I did not know you felt that way. Because you never ask. Right then I understood that this had not started today. So all of this is because of that. It is part of it. She took the suitcase, and perhaps with him things would be different. I looked at her without saying anything. That was no longer just a trip, it was something more. She headed toward the door. Samantha. She stopped, but did not turn around. If you walk out that door. I did not finish the sentence because at that moment I understood that it no longer mattered. Then maybe this was not as strong as you thought, she said and left. The door closed and the sound kept echoing longer than it should have. I stood in the middle of the living room without moving. I did not know exactly what I was waiting for. Maybe for her to come back, to say that everything had been an impulse, a clumsy way of expressing something she had been feeling for a long time. But it did not happen. The silence in the apartment was strange. It was not the normal silence of when each person is busy with their own thing. It was denser, heavier. I sat on the couch and rested my elbows on my knees. I tried to sort out what had just happened, but the thoughts came in fragments. Italy, Derek, I am not married. 2 years without moving forward. That last part kept spinning around the longest. Did she really see it that way? I looked around. Many of her things were still there. Books, clothes, small details that she had been leaving over time. She did not seem like someone who had left permanently, rather someone who walked out hoping to be able to return whenever she wanted. That bothered me. I stood up suddenly. I did not want to stay there overthinking while she, who knows where, had already made her decision. I went into the bedroom. The closet was open, her side half empty, mine intact. I opened my section and took out a backpack. I did not have a clear plan, but I started packing clothes, shirts, pants, the basics, everything fast, almost automatically. While doing so, I began to connect things, not just what she said today, but past attitudes, comments that at the time did not seem important, subtle comparisons, dissatisfactions that were never discussed directly. And then I thought of Nicole, her best friend. I had known her since I started dating Samantha. We were never close, but we ran into each other often. Nicole was direct, sometimes too much so. She said what she thought without a filter. There had been uncomfortable moments with her, looks that lasted a little longer than normal, ambiguous comments that could pass as jokes. Nothing ever happened. Not because there was no opportunity, but because I always maintained a certain distance. I knew what crossing that line implied, but now the situation was different. I stared at the phone for a few seconds. It was not a completely impulsive decision. There was anger, yes, but also a kind of twisted logic that seemed to make sense at the moment. If Samantha had decided to act as if she were free, why could I not do the same? Before thinking too much, I dialed. Hello. Nicole, it is Justin. Hi, is everything okay? No, I replied. Samantha left. There was a pause. What do you mean she left? She went traveling with Derek. Another longer pause. Okay, she finally said. That does not surprise me that much. That made me frown. Why do you say that? Because Samantha has always been like that, she answered. You just did not want to see it. I did not reply. And how are you? She asked. I thought for a few seconds. I do not know, but I do not want to stay here. What are you going to do? I looked at the half-packed backpack. Head down to the Florida coast for a few days, probably. Silence. You do not have to go alone, she said. Then I understood what she was hinting at. Do you want to come? She did not answer immediately. Are you sure about what you are doing? Not entirely, I admitted. But I also do not want to keep thinking. She sighed. This could complicate everything. It is already complicated. Another pause. All right, she said. I am coming with you. We hung up. I stared at the phone for a moment. That is when I felt that something had truly changed. Not just in the relationship with Samantha, but in me. I finished packing without thinking too much. That night, I barely slept, not exactly because of doubts, but because my mind would not turn off. Every time I closed my eyes, I went back to the conversation. The next morning, I picked Nicole up. She got into the car naturally, sunglasses, a small backpack, as if it were just any trip. Ready? She asked. Yes. The drive was long. We talked little at first. Random comments, music, silences that neither tried to fill too much. It was obvious that we were both avoiding talking directly about Samantha. After a couple of hours, Nicole broke the silence. Did you know she was still talking to Derek? No, I replied. I did. I turned my head for a second, surprised. And you never said anything. She shrugged. It was not my place. Besides, I thought you knew too. That left me thinking. No, I said. I had no idea. The rest of the way was quieter. We arrived in the afternoon. The place was not luxurious, but it was nice. Close to the beach, quiet enough. We went into the hotel, left our things, and I sat on the bed. For the first time since everything started, I felt a real pause. It did not last long. The phone vibrated. Samantha. I looked at it for a few seconds before answering. Where are you? She asked without greeting. Her tone was annoyed. Away. Away where? On the coast. Why did you leave? I got up and walked to the window. Because you said you were free. You cannot be serious. I am using your words. It is not the same. I did not reply. You said you were not married, that you were free to do whatever you wanted. Silence. That does not mean that you. It means exactly that. Another pause. Are you alone? I looked back toward the room. Nicole was in the bathroom. No. The silence changed. Who are you with? With Nicole. She did not answer immediately. My best friend. Yes. Her voice dropped. Do not do this. Worse than what? Than all of this. I leaned against the wall. You started this. I did not do anything. You left. But nothing happened. It did not have to happen, I replied. The decision was already made. She took a deep breath. I am at home. That surprised me. What? I did not leave. I frowned. What do you mean you did not leave? Things with Derek did not go as I expected. I canceled. I did not reply. I came back, she continued. And you were no longer there. I looked at the reflection in the window. Wow. Silence. Are you going to come back? She asked. In a few days. Justin. We will talk later. I hung up. I stared at the phone for a few more seconds. I did not feel relief, nor immediate anger. It was something stranger, as if everything had moved too fast and my mind was barely catching up with the facts. The bathroom door opened. Nicole came out drying her hair with a towel. She wore light clothing, calm, as if there were no tension in the room. Was it her? She asked. Yes. And she did not leave. Nicole raised an eyebrow. Of course not. What do you mean? She sat on the bed. Samantha always tests the limits, but she does not like to lose. I did not answer. She got a little closer. And you? Me what? Are you going to run back? I looked at her. No. She nodded slowly. Good. She leaned back relaxed. Then enjoy that you are here. I looked at her for a few seconds. There was something different in the air. It was not just attraction. It was the situation, the context, what had broken and what no longer made sense to keep the same. You are right, I finally said. That day we went out to the beach. The atmosphere was strange, but not uncomfortable. Different, lighter on the surface, although inside everything kept moving. We walked along the sand aimlessly. The sun was going down and there were fewer people. We bought something to drink at a nearby stand and sat facing the sea. You needed this, Nicole said after a while. This, getting out, disconnecting, seeing things from the outside. I nodded without much conviction. I am not sure that this is exactly disconnecting. No, she replied. But at least you stopped staying still. That was true. I realized that if I had stayed in the apartment, I would probably still be sitting on the couch replaying the same conversation over and over. We went into the water. It was cold at first, but then it became pleasant. For a moment, I managed not to think about Samantha, or Derek, or everything else. Just the present. It lasted a short time, but it was enough. Upon getting out, Nicole sat on the sand letting the sun finish drying her. You were always too patient with her, she said suddenly. Too much. Yes, sometimes that is not a virtue. I looked at her. And what should I have done? Set boundaries. Earlier. I let out a small laugh. Funny, that is exactly what I tried to do yesterday. Nicole did not respond immediately. Yes, she said later. But when everything was already at the limit. I did not argue that. Deep down I knew she had some truth. We returned to the hotel when it began to get dark. We were tired, but it was not just physical. It was that kind of exhaustion that comes from thinking too much. We ordered takeout and ate dinner in the room. The atmosphere continued to be calm, but there was something implicit, something that neither mentioned directly. After dinner, Nicole sat on the bed crossing her legs. Did she text you again? I looked at the phone. No, not yet. She will. Surely it did not take long before it vibrated again. Samantha. I sighed before answering. Yes. Are you still with her? Her tone was no longer annoyed. It was lower, more contained. Yes. Justin, we need to talk. We are already talking. No, not like this. Then how? Silence. In person. I rubbed a hand over my face. Not now. Why? Because there is no point in talking in the heat of the moment. I am not angry, she said. I did not reply. We both knew that was not entirely true. It was a mistake, she added. The trip, Derek, everything. I closed my eyes for a second. It was not a mistake, I answered. It was a decision. On the other side, only her breathing was heard. We can fix it. I do not know. We always fix things. That does not mean we always should. Silence. Did something happen with Nicole? She asked suddenly. I looked toward her. She was sitting a few meters away in silence, but clearly listening. That does not matter right now. It matters to me. Justin, just tell me the truth. I thought for a few seconds before answering. I am here, I finally said. That is the only thing you need to know. It was not a direct answer, but it was not a lie either. On the other side, the silence became heavier. Do not do something you might regret, she said. That phrase made me frown. And you? I already regretted it. I did not answer. Justin, please. There was something different in her voice. It was no longer firm or defiant. It was more fragile. But even so, something in me did not move. We will talk when I come back, I said. When? In a couple of days. Okay. I hung up. I left the phone on the table. The silence in the room changed again. It was no longer light. Nicole watched me for a few seconds. And she says it was a mistake. Of course, she responded without surprise. Does she want to fix it too? Of course. I stayed quiet. Do you want to? She asked. That was the question I was avoiding. I do not know. Nicole nodded slowly. Then, do not decide today. She got up from the bed and walked toward the window. But do not pretend nothing happened either. I stepped closer and leaned next to her. I cannot do that. Good. We stood in silence looking at the lights in the distance. There was tension, yes, but it was not just physical. It was everything that had happened, what was happening. Nicole turned slightly toward me. Justin. Yes. You are not responsible for fixing everything always. That phrase stayed with me. Nothing happened that night, and that somehow made everything more real. We slept in the same room, but with a certain distance, not physically necessarily, but a kind of tacit boundary that neither crossed. The next morning we went out early, walked, had breakfast in a small place facing the sea, talked about simple things, but the conversation always returned in one way or another to the same thing. Relationships, decisions, boundaries. The second day passed faster. It was no longer an escape, it was rather a space to think. And when the time came to return, I did not feel relief, but neither the same confusion from the beginning. It was something clearer. The way back was quieter than the way there. Not because there was discomfort, but because there was not so much to say anymore. When dropping Nicole off at her house, she stayed a few seconds before getting out. Are you going to be okay? She asked. Yes, for sure, I nodded. Thank you for coming. She smiled slightly. Take care. She got out of the car and closed the door. I stayed there a few more seconds before driving away. I knew what was next was not going to be easy, but I also knew it was necessary. When I arrived at the apartment, everything was in silence. I opened the door with my key. Samantha was in the living room, sitting with tired eyes, as if she had not slept well in days. The television was on, but without volume. We looked at each other for a few seconds without saying anything. You arrived? She finally said. Yes. I left the backpack near the door. We need to talk. The same phrase again, but now it sounded different, and this time I did not avoid it. Yes, I replied. We need to talk. We remained in silence a few more seconds after saying it. Samantha turned off the television with the remote control and put it aside. That small gesture made everything feel more serious, more definitive. Do you want to sit? She asked. I nodded and settled on the sofa, leaving some distance between us. It was not something planned, it just came out that way. She took a deep breath before starting. I am sorry. She did not say anything else at first, just that. I waited. I know what I did was wrong, she continued. I should not have handled it like that or talked to you in that way. I looked at her, but I did not reply immediately. It was not just how you said it. I finally said. It was what you decided. She nodded. Yes, that too. There was a pause. When Derek texted me, it started. At first it meant nothing. It was just someone from the past. But we started talking, and he made me feel things that I was not feeling here. It was not easy to hear that, but it did not surprise me completely either. What things? Excitement, novelty, the feeling that something is starting, she replied. With you everything was already defined. That phrase did not sound like an attack. It sounded more like a confession. And that is bad, right? She said. But I started feeling that I was getting stuck. I stayed in silence for a few seconds. And you thought that leaving with him was the solution. I did not think about it like that at that moment, she answered. It was more an opportunity to get out of that feeling without caring how it was going to affect me. She looked down. I did not think about it enough. Exactly. The silence returned, but this time it was not uncomfortable. It was necessary. And what happened with him? I asked later. Samantha let out a small laugh, without humor. Nothing I imagined. What do you mean? He was still the same person from before. Only now I saw it clearer, she said. He was not someone with whom I really wanted to build something. I nodded slowly. So, you returned? Yes, but you were no longer here. Of course. She looked at me directly. When I found out you had left, and that you were with Nicole, she stopped for a moment. That is when I understood how it felt. I did not answer. I am not proud of that, she added, but it made me see things from another side. From which one? From yours. That phrase stayed in the air. Did something happen with her? She asked again, but this time without demand. I thought for a few seconds. Not how you are imagining. Samantha nodded as if that answer was enough. Even so, she said, I understand if that changes something for you. I stared at her. If it changes things? I did not ask what. I just waited. Not because of Nicole, I clarified, but because of everything. I took a deep breath before continuing. It is not just the trip, Samantha. It is what you said, what you thought, everything you had not said before. Her eyes filled with tears a little, but she did not cry. I was afraid to say it, she admitted. And you ended up doing it in the worst possible way. Yes. Another pause. We can fix it, she said later. This time for real. I did not answer immediately. I looked around the apartment. Everything remained the same, but it no longer felt the same. I do not know, I said with honesty. That seemed to affect her more than anything else. You do not want to try? It is not that I do not want to, I replied. It is that I do not know if we should. Silence. Why? Because I do not know if what we had was as solid as we thought, or if it was just comfortable. Samantha looked down. We can build something better. Maybe, I said. But that is not built on what just happened without consequences. Her hands were shaking slightly. I do not want to lose you. That phrase was direct, unreal, but something in me no longer reacted the same. I did not want to lose you either, I answered. And even so it happened. The silence grew long. Then, what does this mean? She asked quietly. I took a deep breath. It means we need time. Time. Separated. I nodded. Samantha closed her eyes for a second as if trying to accept the idea. Is it definitive? I do not know, I replied. But right now it is the most honest thing. The tears finally fell, but there was no drama, just contained sadness. I understand, she said. I stood up slowly. I am going to stay a few days away. It is fine. You can stay here. She shook her head. I do not think. I also need to get out of here for a while. I nodded. There was not much more to say. I went to the room, took some more things and put them in the backpack. This time without rush, without anger. When I returned to the living room, Samantha was still sitting, but calmer. We looked at each other one last time. Take care, she said. You too. There were no hugs. There were no promises, just a long pause and acceptance. I left the apartment and closed the door behind me. This time the sound was not so loud, but it was more definitive. While I went down the stairs, I did not feel immediate relief. Neither guilt. It was something different, as if for the first time in a long time things were not resolved, but at least they were real. And that in some way was a beginning. Comment. Hey friends, thank you for sticking around until the end. This one really made me think about how much self-respect matters in any relationship. I have realized that healthy boundaries are not optional. They are essential. When we stand up for ourselves, we are not being difficult. We are simply valuing our own worth. It is okay to choose peace, even when it is hard. Healing starts the moment we stop accepting what hurts us. I hope you take a moment today to check in with your own heart and ask what you truly deserve. Always treat yourself with the same kindness you offer others. You are worthy of relationships that bring you calm, not constant doubt. Let us all keep choosing what feels right and peaceful for our lives. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.